We have on the line now the new coach of the Rochester Razorsharks, Chris Daleo, and Chris is a veteran minor league basketball coach, the third winningest coach in CBA history, coach of the year in 2003 with the Hartford Lightning. He's coached all over the world, including China and Italy, and he coached the Minot Skyrockets in the CBA, and then he took off a couple years. He wanted to see his kids grow up and watch them play, and his kids' names are Satchel, that's his son, and his daughter, Maris. So, Chris, welcome to Rochester. The first question I got to ask you, are you a baseball fan by any chance?
Yeah, did Piazza make the Hall? I didn't.
Yes, he did.
Well, that's fantastic.
83% of the vote.
Isn't that something? Tommy Lasorda took a flyer on that guy because he was friends, I think, with his old man. And look what happened.
Yeah,
right?
Well,
isn't that the story behind that?
Well, that's the official story, but the other story was he might have had a little bit of help, Chris, between when he graduated from high school and when he started into pro ball.
Oh yeah.
He suddenly became a muscular power hitter. But anyway,
okay,
he got in.
Rochester Razorsharks.
But he got in. Yeah. But the Razorsharks tomorrow, you start your season at Jamestown, and the big game. So far, I know you're probably psyched up already. Your team has to be. This is a huge deal down in Kentucky, Owensboro, Kentucky. The battle of the unbeatens. Your Razorsharks, unbeaten last year, the defending champions of the Premier Basketball League. They're taking on what has been the powerhouse of minor league basketball next to Rochester and with Rochester the last couple years. They went from Shreveport of the ABA, where they won 2 consecutive ABA titles. That's the league that has about 100 teams in it. And they just killed people. And they joined the Premier Basketball League this year. They moved to Owensboro, Kentucky to be closer to where the rest of the teams are in the Premier League. And Chris, how psyched up are you and the team for tomorrow night and also for the trip Saturday to Kentucky?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's excited. Vets camp lasted 8 days. So you bring in 20 guys, they bust their hump, they go to work, and then you start slicing guys and cutting guys, and guys get injured and guys compete. So now we're down to our final 12. And to be honest with you, you can't go past Jamestown first. So tomorrow we get on the bus, we go play Jamestown. We have to play well there and start off the season with a win. And then we jump right on the bus and travel throughout the night to get down to Owensboro to play them the next day. So there's some travel involved, but let's take one step at a time first. Let's take care of Jamestown.
Okay.
And,
now, Chris, you did retain a couple of the Razorsharks from last year. Could you tell us who they are?
Well, Dries Crouch has been a long-time Razorshark player, and I think people are very familiar with him. And then Kyle Randall was a Razorshark last year, and Deleo Coker was a big man in the paint last year. All three of them. But the main thing is with those guys is even though they had won here and they represented the organization very well on and off the floor, they still had to come in and compete for jobs because this is a coveted position. People want to come to a winner. People want to come to a good situation. People want to come to a league that's growing and doing good things. So, and for me being involved in minor league basketball for 25 years, I had a lot of connections with a lot of players that I was familiar with.
Can you tell us about some of them, Chris? I know from your press releases it sounded like some of these guys got great credentials.
Well, here's an example. Sidney Holmes. Actually, I had Sidney Holmes. I recruited Sidney out of high school when I was an NAIA coach in Chicago. So that's how long I've known that player. And then Sidney played for me for 2 years in college, and he helped lead me to the Final Four, the NAIA Division I Final Four, which was held in Kansas City. And then when I went to the CBA, he graduated from school, and then I brought him in as a rookie in the CBA. And then he stayed with me for a couple of years. He left and went to Portugal. He left and went to Australia. And then we met back up again in Minot, North Dakota, for 2 years. And then I'm meeting back up with him again. So that's just one example of a player that I call, but he had to compete for a spot.
Okay, now you got. I think I don't even know if these two guys made the final 12-man roster, but Troy Jackson is just a scoring machine last year for Erie, and Nate Barfield is a good power forward. Both those guys on your roster?
Yes, both those individuals. Now Nate Barfield is a second-team All-PBL. And when I took the position, I heard good things out of Nate from representatives that I know, friends that I know in the league. So that was an easy phone call to make, and that was really one of my first signings was Nate. Because he works so hard, he's a big body in the low post, he bangs down there, and he's a great kid. Really works hard, really wants to get better.
Well, he was on the team last year that the Razorsharks beat in the finals, and he was one of their better players.
Well, and he's going to do good things for us.
And how about Troy Jackson?
You know, Troy Jackson was kind of the same thing. To be honest with you, I had another two-guard in mind to come in, and Troy called, and then it was an easy signing. It's not like he was begging, but we established a rapport prior to him coming into camp because I wanted to make sure when you have an MVP coming in from another team that he feels comfortable and we feel comfortable with him. And so actually when we had two free agent camps here in Rochester, Troy came to both of them, which is kind of rare for a vet, for an MVP caliber player to actually come down to a free agent camp setting and work hard. But that's how bad Troy wanted to be here and showcase the skills for Rochester.
Okay,
and
now
I think that means a lot.
One thing that separated the Razorsharks from most of the competition in this league, and I'm sure, Chris, before you came here, you'd investigate and you saw what a good situation it is here. But Rochester seems to have much more depth than most of the teams in this league. And it sounds like your 12-man roster, it sounds like you had a tough time cutting some guys who were pretty good players.
Well, yeah, you always have a tough time because all the players that I invited into camp were players that I had relationships with. So it's always hard to make those final cuts of players that you know. But if you're a professional basketball player, professional any athlete, you know you have to go. If you're a baseball player, you go to preseason. If you're a football player, you go to vets camp. Same thing in basketball. You know that you have to go compete against others. So everybody had to compete for those 12 roster spots.
Okay.
And the difference this year versus last year, prior is we have new clubs that the league has expanded.
Okay.
They brought new clubs in with stronger ownership groups, and when you have stronger ownership groups, that means you can spend a little more dollars for players. And when you spend a little more dollars for players, you can bring in more of a high.
Well, the home opener Saturday, January 16th against Providence. The season opener tomorrow in Jamestown. Then the big game Saturday night in Owensboro, Kentucky. And the first question, the last question: Satchel and Maris named after the ball players?
Absolutely. Satchel Paige and Roger Maris.
Okay.
Really.
That's what I was a little suspicious of that.
Yeah, when my daughter was born, it was all Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire. I was watching the home run race.
Well, I'm glad you didn't name your daughter Sosa.
Yeah, thank God. Especially if you saw pictures of him lately.
Okay.
He looks like a vampire, for God's sake. But,
okay.
Roger Maris was kind of being overshadowed.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris, and good luck. We'll be talking to you hopefully a lot before the season ends, okay?
I hope so.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Thank you,
All
Chris.
right.
Good luck.